Hey guys, so before this interview gets started, I wanted to let you know that there are time codes in the description. They're divided by section. So if you're looking specifically for something on low budgets or something in Bronies React, those sections are separated for you. And then there's also time codes for the individual questions as well. So without further ado, enjoy the interview. Hey, what's up, guys? This is John from TheUndercoverBrony, and I am here with one of the most high-profile bronies you can ever meet. He is both the creator of Bronies React and the Low Budgets. ACRacebest, how are you today, good sir?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's that's quite the intro. Now I got to live up to it. Can't make any promises, but no, it's cool to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So the first question I'm going to ask is something I ask everyone because the answer is so varied and so much fun. But what is your Brony story? How did you get into the fandom?
So for me, I got into the fandom just after, or actually just before the season 2 premiere. It was during that in between seasons, and I had a lot of friends talking about the show on a forum that I was on, and my girlfriend at the time, now wife, she was telling me, she's like, "Hey, why don't you check this out?" And I'm like, "Sarah, no." Like, I remember My Little Pony quite vividly from my childhood. I remember the commercials. I remember not caring at all about the commercials, and yeah, I was like, don't need it, don't want it, don't want to touch it. I was still kind of in that phase where I've never really cared about what others think about me. I have very little shame. I think people have seen that throughout the years. So it wasn't quite influenced by that. I wasn't interested. And she's like, "No, just watch one episode and then I'll never bother you with any of it." And I was like, "Well, one episode, whatever, let's give it a shot." And needless to say, I ended up maybe becoming a fan of the show just a little bit. I watched the one episode with her, and I was like, it was actually better than I thought. There's this character, Rainbow Dash, and I'm like, not the kind of character I was anticipating in this. I wasn't expecting them to have a feud. They were racing, which, as you've already kind of alluded to, I've a bit of a fan of racing, so she strategically chose this episode as the one. This is the one I'm going to show you, and I went to school a couple weeks later, and I still kind of had the show in the back of my head. And the thing with moving into dorms at college is sometimes you have to move in like a week before studies begin. So you just have like a week that you're out there, and I'm like, well, I guess now's a chance to maybe check out the opener to the first season. And needless to say, I watched the entire the entire season in 3 days, and the rest was history.
So as you alluded to, the episode that she showed you was Fall with Her Friends, I would assume.
That was it. Yep, that was it.
So the next question I have for you is, where did you get the idea to start Bronies React?
So Bronies React spawned as it was initially a series that was a parody of Teens React that was created by the Fine Brothers. They at the time they were, well, I haven't quite checked in on them, so I'm sure they're still probably doing just fine. But they were kind of a big sensation. It all started with their show called Kids React. Everyone got a big kick out of kids reacting to Neon Cat. Everyone remember that? And so they eventually started a series called Teens React, where they went into some more adult-like topics, and they had the teens react to just the intro of My Little Pony, and then they asked them questions in regards to, why do you think guys like this show? To which, of course, a lot of the fandom was like, seriously, you showed them the intro and that was it. And I understand by the format of the show, it makes sense. Like, they're not going to have people sit there and be like, all right, here's 26 episodes and then tell us what you think. But their take on the fandom was less than flattering, especially with how it was presented. You know, it was being presented as, yeah, you know, old dudes watch this show, you know, what do you think's wrong with them type of thing. And of course the teens were not very open to it. And because of that, at one point I was just like, you know, it'd be kind of funny to do, you know, a reactception, if you will, where what if the fandom reacted to the teens' reaction to the fandom? I was like, this sounds stupid. I love it. I should do it. And at the time, I only had, you know, my channel had been putting out some content. I didn't have a lot of subscribers at the time. I mean, I was happy with where I was. I had 167 subscribers. I'm like, I'm on top of the world. And so I went around, and what I wanted to do with the first Bronies React was I wanted to get recognizable faces that the fandom would know to join in on this. So it, you know, it was something that a lot of the fandom could relate to. And that's how I ended up with guys like Dusty Cat, for example, who had his, you know, manliest brony in the world video, and which was a huge hit in the early years of the fandom. And so yeah, I kind of went around and I literally typed into YouTube bronies with a camera. That's how I looked for people to figure out, oh, who's recognizable. And I was turned down by a good number of people going, I don't know who you are. I don't know why I trust you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But you know, the group that I ended up with, it was awesome. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better starter group for that first Bronies React. And you know, it did way better than I thought it would. I knew going into it, again, in the early years, we're talking 2012 of the fandom, the internet, it was very polarizing, the brony community, or just bronies in general, very polarizing. You either were a brony or you hated bronies, it seemed like. There was very little neutral ground. And so when I made this video, I went into it with the expectation that we were going to have people show up and, you know, troll the video, attack us for making it, for, you know, putting our faces to the brony name. And I also, you know, I kind of went into this going, I don't want to try and prove a point with the first Bronies React. I wanted us to have fun with it. I didn't want us to go in there and go, no, bronies aren't like this. Cause I'm like, the last thing that you should ever try and do on the internet is that, you know, is, oh, I'm going to go defend myself. And, you know, and again, it was overall lighthearted. So we were like, let's make it lighthearted and joke and parody and have fun. And we did. And again, it just, it was a much bigger hit than I'd ever anticipate. And it's been a lot of years of fun that spawned from that first one.
You actually answered the next question I would have had, which was it hard to coordinate at first? And it's kind of nerve-wracking to ask a lot of those, at the time, high-profile bronies.
You know, I went into it expecting to be turned down a lot. In fact, I went into this expecting it to not happen. I figured enough people would turn me down that, you know, I didn't anticipate people were going to be open to the idea. And I knew that I was a name that they didn't recognize, and I was open to that. You know, I was like, this might happen, and that's okay. You know, you don't know if you don't ask. And I, you know, just going through it, and the people that I started having jump on board, there were a few that didn't end up being in that first React because conflicts came up. But again, with the people I did, you know, I was contacting them through YouTube Messenger at the time. YouTube had a messenger that you could use. And that was my point of contact, was I was, you know, hitting people up. There were some people that, like I said, turned it down. There's some people I never heard from. And it's funny because a lot of the people that, in fact, I think most, if not all the people that ended up not joining in on the project, I never really heard much from them in general, community wise, from my recollection. After that, it's not like it was somebody who later said, oh, you know what? No, I changed my mind. I want to be part of this. They were people who, I don't know if anyone would have at this point in the fandom recognized. And And that, that's not a big deal. I was asking friends of mine, Panama Matt, if you recognize that name. He's a guy that does some of the low budget stuff with us, and obviously the Semi Perfect podcast and all that stuff. And I went to him at one point and said, hey, I need, and I think people get confused sometimes when I say this, because I said I need numbers, and it doesn't mean subscriber count. It didn't mean I need popular people. I literally meant I need enough people in this video for it to make sense. And luckily we, Tombstone, the Living Tombstone, was a kind of a later inclusion to the project. But I remember when we had him on board, I was like, wow, this all came together. And everybody, again, everyone that decided to be part of it, I think there were 6 of us. I could be more thankful that they put their trust and support into the project when they had no reason to. They didn't know who I was. And, it's just, it all came together so duct taped together, but the final product ended up really paying off. So I'm always thankful for those guys.
Yeah. Now, has there ever been anyone throughout the years that you've wanted to get on to Bronies React, but cannot for some reason?
I had been turned down by people. Like once the series became established, there were people that either weren't as interested in it or it wasn't their thing. A lot of people would recall musicians, for example, that I had talked with. One was Wooden Toaster, and Glaze got back to me, and it wasn't, when someone turns down the project, it's not like a personal thing. It's like, hey, that's cool. And Glaze was like, music's my thing, on camera stuff not so much. That's nice. That's all right. I was close with Alex S back in the day, and kind of similar situation for him. He's like, the music's my thing. And that was cool. There were I've joked to this question in the past where I've been like, I hit up Lauren Faust and she politely declined, and then people go, oh, and I'm like, I'm kidding, I've never hit up Lauren Faust. But for the most part, like I think another name that people recognize, and this one comes with a little bit of a fun story, was Max Gilardi, the guy who created the .mov series or .mov series. I had seen him at a couple of conventions, and I decided, you know what? Again, if I don't ask, I'll never know. So I hit him up at the time that series was still incredibly popular. And I was like, hey, are you interested in doing this? And for those that know Max or saw him at conventions, know that he has this persona that was hilarious, but oh my gosh, you did not want to be on the wrong side of it. He was just very crass, maybe might be the phrasing for it. And he got away with some. So I always could think back to the first Equestria LA and his panel. I'm like, man, were rules broken that day? It was just a very off the wall panel, but it was hilarious. But he was so respectful in his response, turning it down. Like I figured he'd be like, F no. Why would you ever even think? And he was like, I appreciate you hitting me up. I wouldn't want to give people the wrong perception. I don't consider myself a brony. Like it was just a very clean cut email, not what I expected at all. And I was like, cool, thanks for your time. So, there's been a couple along the way, but ultimately it's just been, the people I've had on, again, I've been super thankful, been very close with a lot of them. And, yeah, it's been quite a journey.
So how did you get M.A. Larson to come on for the season 5 premiere?
So M.A. Larson, and I don't know how many people actually believe this, but for M.A. Larson, one day I get messaged a private message on Twitter from Larson, and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you. And immediately going through my head, I'm going, oh crap, what did I do to piss off the show staff? Like, what did we say in the last React? What did we do? I'm immediately thinking like, there's only one reason Larson's going to want to contact me, and that's probably to take me to court, because he's Larson. He's he's Larson. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And he goes, so I hate that I'm asking this, but I want to be in the next Bronies React. What do you want to be in the next Bronies React? And it was funny because he's like, yeah, I want to have fun with this. And Larson, you know, he's been somebody who, and people have seen this, you know, Saber Spark and I have always had this feud with Larson. And it's been friendly fire. You know, he's just so much fun to jab at, because you know he's going to come back with something good. And yeah, and when he approached me about that, I was like, absolutely, let's make this happen. I was like, I can't even believe this. And I kept it a secret. In fact, nobody on the React knew that he was going to be in it until the video went live. Like, even the reactors themselves were like, Larson's here. And that was by design. You know, it was funny because Larson, once he started filming his stuff, you know, he kind of came back and he was like, I don't know if this is working out. I don't think I'm that funny. And I'm like, Larson, I've been with you at conventions. You're hilarious. You need to have trust in yourself. And I even, like, you know, Gabe or Black Griffin, he hit him up, and like, we were all like, you know, like, Mitch, you're a funny guy. Don't even worry about it. You know, I always tell the reactors, because a lot of times they'll send me a chunk or maybe a straight recording of footage, and I always tell them, don't worry, I'm not gonna put something in this that's gonna compromise, you know, like, I'm in this for all of us. I'm not gonna make anybody look bad. And yeah, and he ended up sending in the footage, and again, people loved it. You know, it was a huge hit. Yeah, he came to me. He was like, I want to be on this thing. And I wanted to say no. I really did. Well, you know, it's so interesting because it's one of those things where I do, again, typically, if we're talking about Larson at a convention, for example, we're not being nice. We ain't going to be nice. But that guy, from the moment I met him, which was, again, it was, I met him at Downtown Disney, of all places.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was before Equestria LA. And I just happened to, you know, I was meeting up. I was with Saber and Dusty, and we ended up at a restaurant. And what was it? Blues something, but it doesn't exist anymore. It got torn down, and I think that's what they turned into the bowling alley that's there. And you know, it was just a place where people were having some casual drinks, and I'm sitting down at this table, and I start looking around, and that's when I realize there's Andrea Libman, there's Megan McCarthy, there's M.A. Larson. And you know, this was my first time meeting any of them, and it was just like, okay, that's cool. And just seeing everyone just casually having conversations, having a good time. It was the Thursday before the convention, so you know, people were just in that excite mode. And from that very first moment, though, Larson wanted to know, like, he came over to us and he's like, I want to know your story. I want to know your name in the fandom. I want to know, how did you find the show? What do you like about the show? From the get-go, Larson has cared so much about the fandom and its response and its reaction and its perception of the show. And I mean, all the way through till when we were backstage at BronyCon 2019, the last BronyCon, and we were all, you know, we were all just sitting back there, and you know, we were waiting for closing ceremonies, and we just all kind of had a moment. And you know, there were a lot of emotions going during that BronyCon. Obviously, it wasn't the last Brony convention, but it was, you know, it was just kind of it felt like a chapter coming to an end. And yeah, just being back there with Larson and all of us, and you know, it was like, damn, like the show staff is one of the massive driving forces behind the success of the show, obviously. And but it doesn't just stop at their product they put out. It also goes to how much they truly do care about the fandom. And Larson is right at the top of that list. He's always been, so even though there's always that thanks M.A. Larson and the constant jabs that the fandom has towards him, and new people come in and go, who's this person I'm supposed to hate? Larson has always cared so deeply about the fandom, and it's just one of those things where it warms your heart as a, just as someone that's part of it. That those are the people working on the show.
So my next question for you is, on average, how long does a Bronies React take to produce?
Oh boy. So obviously, some people before an episode airs they're already asking me, where's the Bronies React? So it isn't instantaneous, as much as I would like that. Bronies Reacts, so the episode airs, and typically I'm typically very busy on Saturday, so sometime during the weekend I try to catch the episode. I hate spoilers, so I try to see things as soon as I can. And for me, when I watch the episode on my first viewing, I'm also filming my React footage. So all of my stuff is first time viewing. I should say most of my stuff. There's been past Reacts that weren't, but I'd say definitely the last probably 80% of the Reacts we've put out have been. And so once I film that, that's when I start putting what I have a format together, which is all it really is it's really for first time reactors to read through. It's saying, hey, basic, what it really boils down to is me saying, do whatever you want. I don't really give direction. I want the reactor to be able to display their humor, their personality. And all I really list out is the questions. If there's any specific questions outside of the normal ones that I typically ask, which isn't even part of the regular React, it's part of the bonus. So then I send out the format, and I typically try to give people about 3 weeks to get their footage together. Some people edit it down, others don't. So it's not unusual for me to have about 12 to 15 hours of footage to go through with all this stuff, especially, I used to have 8 to 10, and then next thing you know, we had 12 to 14 people. And the big React that we did when we had, 60 people part of that one. But yeah, there's a lot of footage to go through. And then after, what I do is I chop up all the footage and just cut out all the bits that I know I'm not going to use. And then I start piecing it all together. And then I edit all the audio individually on all the clips. And then I go through and clean up and put all, the last bit with the labels and everything. It's about from the time I watch the episode, on a good day, it's about a month before a React is coming out. And again, a lot of that is those 3 weeks. I try to give everyone, because I know this isn't their job. Everyone's busy with either school or work, family, what have you. I try not to, put this on people as a, hey, I need your footage in 3 days. I need it immediately, because and some people like to do extra skits and whatnot, and those take time. So I just try to give everyone time and, respect the people that I'm working with, because I feel like that's always been such an important thing for me, is, making the people want to come back. And I feel like, as you've seen, as everyone hopefully has seen from the cast we've had, people have been around for a while. So that's always nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, for anyone who knows our channel, have been around for a while, that this channel was at once part of a lower tier Bronies React called My Little Brony Reactions Are Magic. And that's definitely something that I would agree with, Race, because that reaction crew, they wanted it by that following Wednesday after the episode aired.
Ooh.
I think we were only in 2 of them because we were able to get our footage over there in time. But for most of it, we weren't.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. And that's another thing too, is you always hear people say there's quantity and quality. But the one thing people also forget about is time. And there, as far as it goes, I'd rather have a React that came out a week later that was that much better. And I learned this early on because there was one time where I rushed through a React, and this is funny because I'm trying to remember how this whole thing worked. I don't even remember which one it was, but I edited it super quick because I was going on vacation for a week. And so I slammed through it and I hit upload, and then we left. Like I literally had time to hit upload and then get in the car and we were gone. And I had my laptop with me, and I started watching through some of it. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, there are editing errors all over the place. And it drove me nuts because I knew, I'm like, when I go back and watch this, it's going to drive me mad. And so I literally had to call, because I didn't have internet access at the time. This was before I had at least a decent smartphone. I had to call Tommy and say, I need you to log into my account and kill the upload that's going up. This can't go live. You have to save me. And so he did that. And yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I've always been quality over quantity or getting something out too fast.
Next question I have for you is, do you have a favorite and least favorite React?
Yeah. My favorite and least favorite React was reacting to Generation 3.
Okay.
That one left me in physical pain, but it also was like there are moments, because obviously with a lot of the stuff that we do, and in many cases we'll ham things up for the comedic response of the audience. I went into Generation 3 with the absolute full assumption that it wasn't going to be as bad as everyone made it out to be. I'm like, and I was ready. I was like, I'm going to call it out. I'm not going to sit here and just feed to people going, oh, it sucks. I'm like, if it doesn't suck, I'm calling everyone out. And it sucked. Like, I mean, when Scootaloo showed up in the G3.5 episode, I was just like, this can't be real. Like, there's no way that someone made this. Like, this is, the devil has put something in my brain. It doesn't exist.
This must be some sort of hex.
Yeah, it was just gnarly. To be honest though, with this question, I would jokingly say that was my least favorite React. But I don't know if I could really choose a least favorite React. There were a few times where we had a lot of Reacts being worked on at the same time. I've had issues with copyright with some Reacts in the past that slowed down when they came out. But I don't think I could really say one was my least favorite. As far as favorite Reacts go, that one does go to the end of Generation 4 Bronies React that we did. And for me, again, that one was special because not only did we have a great cast again reacting to everything, but I was able to bring back just about everybody that I had ever worked with in a React that I wanted to bring back for the second half, which was just talking about the impact that the show had on their lives. And it literally started off with, like, I had this vision where I'm like, it'd be so cool to get people like Tomb, who had a huge effect on the early Bronies Reacts, to be able to just say a couple words. And I had so many more people. Like, I figured that was going to be a case where people have been like, I've moved on. No, it's cool. There were like a very small select few that thought I was specifically asking them to react to the episode. And they're like, oh, we'll probably turn it down. And then I was like, no, I said, I just wanted you to answer the question. They're like, oh, these are friends of mine that I still talk to. So obviously I was like, oh, but it was, and that was specifically Acoustic Brony talking to Ed. So I still talk with Ed, and they got their thing going on. I love those guys. And but yeah, no, it was for me. I did not anticipate how many people would not only want to come back for this. These were people that some of them I had only worked with once, and I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. And it was like everyone was like, absolutely, I'd love to be back on. And I was like, wow, really? You know, you think after those years, people are like, nah, this ain't my thing anymore. And to me, that's what made it so special. And then getting to see, because when I release the reacts, I do premieres, because for me, that's my chance of kind of doing like a, you know, an audience release and seeing how people are reacting to it, and seeing the way people just lost their minds over that second half. Like the first bit went great, but then when people started realizing, like I was reading through those comments and seeing people be like, oh my gosh, is this person going to be here? Is this person going to be here? And then on top of that, to have show staff get involved with that, many of which had never appeared in a Bronies React before. It just, again, it was super special to see how many people were excited to take part in that, because that, again, it to me just felt like, wow, you know, this React series did kind of have a legacy to it. And I'd say did, obviously we're still making the reacts, but the impact that we were able to have on everybody that were just a part of the series, that was very special to me. It meant a lot to me. And you know, I remember too, when I released it, I remember being really excited about the next convention, being like, can't wait to talk about this episode. And I'm realizing it now as we're talking about it, where I'm like, you know, that came out just at the time where the whole country and world was getting shut down because of the pandemic, and we haven't been able to have that opportunity. So yeah, no, that was so special to me. And it was a very humbling moment. It was a very, you know, just to see, like, cool, like, you know, you try to respect everybody that you work with and treat them as best as you can. And I felt like that was kind of a sign where it's like, mission accomplished. It looks like we did it.
You know, you were talking about how we haven't been able to go to a convention since the last episode. Conspiracy theory, I feel like this show may have been the last point of keeping the world from exploding on itself. And now that it's gone, everything's going to hell.
Well, who's going to prove you wrong? Like, they can't. They just can't. Sorry. Yeah. No, I've heard people say that, and it's like,
where's the lie?
Yeah, where's the lie?
Okay, so moving on to convention things. You do quite a few panels, such as Whooves Line and Bronies React panels, of course, as well as a few different others. What has that experience been like? I know for myself, I've been on a couple panels with some analysts and whatnot, but nowhere near something that would be, you know, more of your forte. So what has that experience been like?
It's been incredibly rewarding. You know, it's kind of like when you release a project or a video or whatnot, and then see the response. What's fantastic about the conventions that we go to is they're conventions. You know, you have that audience there. I have had so much fun at the, you know, whether it's one of the conventions where we have 2 to 3 panels, or, you know, BronyCon, I'm pretty certain at one point we did like 16. Like, it was, we've had weekends like that. Again, I oftentimes reference Saber because we've done so much of this work together. It's rare to have us at a convention where both of us aren't there. And you know, for us, our whole thing is when a convention brings us out, when we're going there as community guests, we want the conventions to know, and obviously the ones that we've been working with know this, that we're there for them. We're there to work. We're ready to hammer down whatever they need us to do. Bring it on. So yeah, so sometimes things do get quite busy, but it in the best of ways. from the smaller panels that we sometimes do, like the How to YouTube or the podcast panels, getting, just interacting with those audiences on a more intimate level, to the Bronies React panels, where I always feel like, like for me, because I always hear people, I've heard this referenced before, whether they're in-person panels or online panels, how like some people get like burnt out, like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this, I need a break, I need this. I don't know, like for me, I absolutely thrive with that kind of energy. Like for me, it's like, oh my gosh, throw me into the next one, let's go. And like for Bronies React, like we don't go into these typically with like a script or, hey, this is the points we're going to hit up. Like we typically go in because I want I want every panel that we do to be a genuinely, well, first off, be a genuine experience, but to also be new every time. I don't want every panel to be like, all right, here we are, and here's what I'm going to talk about. I want it to be like, I want the audience to ask us questions, no matter how weird the questions are, bring it on. It's like, again, and that's where I feel like we've had the success that we've had with a lot of just the regular panels that we do, because everyone is different. That being said, there's nothing more different than the Who's Line panels, and by far my absolute favorite panel that we do, and one of the most popular panels that show up at any of the conventions we go to, and yeah, just the stuff that happens in Who's Lines, whether it's the stuff that goes right, which is hilarious, or the stuff that epically fails, where it's just, for years I continue to go back and watch these and have a great time with them. And again, I'm always touched when people are telling us that, oh, this was our favorite panel, we had so much fun at it. Hearing that laughter, feeding off of that laughter, doing the improv comedy stuff, there's almost nothing like it. It is amazing. And it's one of those things where recently I watched a Robin Williams documentary, rest in peace, Robin. And that's one of the things that, was discussed in that, was just that energy, that adrenaline you get. There's almost nothing like it. And I can't wait to get back to it. I can't wait to put on another Who's Line panel and, be back there with the audience.
I definitely understand what you mean about, Robin Williams, because he was the only comedian that I've ever heard that I can actually feel my side split from laughing so hard. The one that I remember seeing first was his Live on Broadway, where he was talking about the different Olympic sports and all this other stuff, and it was just so funny. I've never heard humor that side-splittingly good in a very long time. So next question I have for you is, let's talk about your appearance on Steve Harvey. What was that experience like?
So the Steve Harvey show was unique in that well, unique, obviously it was unique. It was different. That was just one of those things where, for me, I went into that initially going, I'm not doing this. I'm not falling for this crap. I know how these go. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and talking with the producers and talking to my my boss, because I'm like, I can't get time off this quick, because essentially they came to me and said, hey, we need you Monday. It was like, we need you in like 5 days. I'm like, I can't just get time off that fast. Well, it turns out I could. And yeah, I just remember flying out to Chicago and sitting in the hotel the night before and just kind of being like, I have no idea how this is going to go, but I had the confidence in myself with, I've been in a lot of those kind of pressure situations up to this point in life where I knew that I could handle myself. I'm like, whatever they throw at me, I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to cater to their answers. I'm not going to let them dig in to the fandom in a negative way, as much as I can control. You know, I went in with a strategy. I was like, what I got to do is I need to pull, you know, them to my side. I need, that was all that I went in there with, because I knew specifically Steve Harvey. Like I knew that I'm like, I gotta convince him that I get it. And that was the hard part, was the segment I was on called Is It Weird? And they told me, they're like, the one thing we don't want you to say is that it's weird. And I'm like, crap. Like, that's like, you know, if I have a family member, like a cousin, who's like, so what's this brony thing? I'll be like, all right, so this is going to sound weird, because it is weird. And I'm like, how do I tell him I get that it's weird without saying it? And so that was my whole approach to this. And obviously everything's very detailed out in the, you know, I did a recording with the Semi-Perfect podcast that people can find on YouTube that details the entire experience from start to finish. But yeah, I went in there again with a strategy. I didn't anticipate, but I should have, that they bought me a suit that, oh my gosh, it turns out that we bought the wrong size. So now we're going to put you in this weird looking sweater vest, and we're going to chop your hair like you're Gunther from, like, coming from Sunday school. I'm just like, what's going on? And the whole time I just was like, that's fine. Bring it on. I can handle this. And that's why I took it on. A lot of people, you know, think like, you actually sign a waiver. I don't know how many people know this, but you sign a waiver basically saying, if the show ruins your life, you can't sue them. Like, it all but literally says that. Like, if your family falls apart, if you go into a financial crisis, any of the stuff, you can't come after us for it. And I was like, gnarly. And yeah, and then it was game time. I went on stage, and I met Steve briefly before we went on. He just shook my hand, and the lady who was also on the segment shook our hands, said thanks for being on the show. And then we went on, and the producer kind of gave me like this like, oh yeah, you know, they knew my story going into it, because I gave them my story. I told them, they typed it out, but then they give it back to you as a script, as all right, so here's your story. Here's the story that you told us. And I was like, because it was worded differently than anything I ever said. Like, the first line was literally me saying, I am obsessed with My Little Pony. And I'm like, I have never said that sentence to you guys, and I am not going to go and say that on television, because that immediately is going to disconnect you from anyone who has a chance of going, I can relate. I'm obsessed with My Little Pony. Someone go, oh, okay, I'm like, I'm not going to say that. I've always said I'm a big fan of the show. So once I started my story, that's how I did it. I'm a big fan. And I do remember, though, like, you know, you going back to the convention conversation about how you feel with that audience and the laughter. By God, did I never feel more alone when I cracked my first joke, which it was cut out, but I cracked a joke and it was dead silent. And I'm like, ooh, tough crowd. Okay. And, you know, I even went in strategically with it, because I was like, I knew that the show was predominantly middle-aged women. So I was like, I'm going to cater to them. When I tell the story about how, you know, at the time, again, my girlfriend, you know, Sarah tried to talk me into watching the show, and I was like, and naturally the woman won the argument, and I look up, nothing. And I'm like, okay, all right, they're not on my side. That's fine. I'm here by myself. And yeah, it was just, you know, going through it, I presented as much as I could to the contrary. You know, I explained how, and I did this strategically. I brought it up to them, and they're like, oh, that sounds great, that I do demolition derbies. And, you know, again, that was my like little twist in there, where they're like, oh, how unique. We'll put that in. And I'm like, perfect, because anyone that knows demolition derbies knows that that's not some dainty sport that you get into. Not saying dainty's a problem, but, you know, you get beat to hell in a demolition derby car. And, you know, that was my like, I got them on that side. And then, yeah, I just remembered when I did present, I always love bringing up this line, but I kind of paused them, and I'm like, Steve, because again, the psychiatrist or whatever, he tried. He gave me his like full, you know, offense, and I'm like, oh no. Because I knew everything that he knew. Like he tried to come at me with the whole, oh, you're teetering on something dangerous. And I'm like, you know nothing else about me. You literally just read my story. All you know is I make videos. I like watching the show. I paint demolition derby cars. I'm like, that's it. That's all he can attack me with. So I'm like, I literally threw it back at him where I was like, when he's like, oh yeah, you're getting into dangerous levels here. I'm like, because I paint up cars occasionally. On everything else you said, but he never piped up after that. It was all Steve from there. And that's when I brought up that whole thing to Steve where I'm like, Steve, do you want to know what I said to myself when I realized I'd watched the entire first season in 3 days? And he leans forward, he goes, what'd you say to yourself? I go, shit. And Steve, that's when Steve kind of leans back and he starts to smile, and I go, God damn it, I did it. I freaking did it. And he just, that's when he broke into, again, that part was edited out. I asked them in advance there too, kind of like I asked you before this. I'm like, can we cuss on this? And they're like, yeah, it'll be edited. So I'm like, I'm going to cuss on national television. I'm going to do it. And that's when Steve had his turning point where he goes, you know what? I like you just the way you are. Don't change. Freaking watch the show. Is it weird? Yes, but why the hell not? Stick to who you are. And I was like, I literally like when the cameras turned off, I was like, holy crap. I did it. All right. So no, it was, I love that I did it though. It was such an eye-opening experience. And again, for anyone that wants to hear the absolute full story of it, with all the weird side of those type of shows, and maybe figure out more about how those shows work, they could check it out on the Semi Perfect podcast upload on YouTube. So
that specific episode will be linked below as well.
There you go.
I do know that that psychiatrist guy was definitely little unusual, calling you simultaneously both progressive and regressive.
Yeah. So I was very neutral. Well, again, too, is I just stayed calm throughout the whole experience because I'm going into this. I know I can hold my own. And that's part of why, I'll be honest, part of why I decided to do it was because what I didn't want them to do was to go and keep looking for someone and eventually find someone that maybe thinks that's a good idea to get on camera, and then realize I'm not ready for this. I don't, because they try to steer you in a direction like full on. It was completely cut out, but there was one point where Steve Harvey legitimately asked me if I've ever watched any movies with black people in it. And again, I'm in Chicago. I got like 70% black audience up here, and I'm just sitting here going, wow, not what I expected to be asked while I was up here, but yes. Like I even had to go through my head where it was just answer the question, just say yes. Like, because, and again, that probably wasn't going to go anywhere anyways, but it's stuff like that where it's like you just have to you have to really read the situation and be confident in yourself that like, is this something? And again, I didn't want somebody to end up there as a representative of the Brony fandom and then realize, oh, this was a mistake. I was like, I'm committing to this. Whatever happens, happens. I'm cool with it. I can do this. Not worried. Let's go. And it was fun. I'm glad I did it. No regrets.
So the next question I have for you is, I was actually surprised when I was doing some of the research for this interview. I actually thought that originally your channel started out with the low budget stuff, but no, that actually came a little later, and the pony stuff was there right from the very beginning.
Yes.
The low budget's been going on for 5 seasons now. What has been your favorite part about producing it?
So I'm very much somebody who I love to look back at things. It's one of the reasons why convention vlogs are so important to me, and why I love going back and watching them. But there's nothing more to me that if I'm going to do something stupid on a racetrack and potentially dangerous, I'm like, I better have video of it. I better be able to go back and watch it. And we started working on these cars So when we started the series, it was when the track was coming back from bankruptcy in 2013. The 2012 season didn't happen. And we had started dabbling a little bit into these destruction events in 2010, 2011. And just the crap that these cars do to you while just during the build, where you're like, are you serious? Like a car being completely dead, and then you go, well, what if you kick the tire and then you turn the key and it starts up, and you go, no one's going to believe this. So through those experiences, I'm like, I want to document this. You know, we knew coming into the 2013 season that there was going to be a demolition derby, and we're like, there were cars that were left over from the bankruptcy, and the track's like, do whatever you want with them. And so we're like, well, hell, we'll turn one of them into a trailer race car and one to a derby car. And you know, just from that kickoff, there have been some moments with incredible laughs. Obviously, the really rewarding moments are when you can hoist a trophy at the end of an event or have the fans on your side. There are events that Tommy and I finished last and second to last, but we had the fans, man. In fact, a very recent episode, I was going to run a car. In fact, the demolition derby that this car runs in is going to be going live soon. But we painted the car up as Rainbow Dash. And that's one of the fun things. Sarah has done the paint jobs for the cars. Amazing. And I love it. And, you know, I've won a demolition derby in a Pinkie Pie car, but you know, during the enduro, the car had an overheating problem, and I didn't want to risk it not making it to the demolition derby, so I shut off my car. Well, Tommy pulls up behind me in his goof off way, not giving a crap, and goes, I'm going to push you. And so he's just pushed me around the racetrack. We're just getting in everyone's way, but every time we go by the stands, the fans erupt. They're going nuts. And it was moments like that where it was like, we just loved putting on a show. Tommy and I cared much more about the show than we did about how we finished. And, you know, to us, that was always the most important thing, which is part of why we won as few trailer races as we did, which arguably one of the most difficult things to win, I'd say, in any of the events we do were trailer races, because there's so many factors that can take you out. But yeah, no, it was, a lot of it was, again, just rewarding and fun, and there were a lot of laughs. And I think the most annoying thing about it is how often the lavalier mics would choose whether or not they wanted to work, because sometimes you'll just not hear us talking at all. And that's because those lavaliers, man, they barely pop out, and you're just like, oh my gosh. But one little side note with the low budgets is it was the craziest thing setting up all those cameras. Like, we were running 16 cameras on a night while also being track announcers and, you know, running the events. And it was always so exhausting to get through an event, but it was always so much fun. That was good times.
So do you want to talk about the creation of Low Budgets TV as a whole?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously the Low Budgets, the name spawned off of what we had started back in 2006, which was Low Budget TV. Low Budget TV literally started off as a joke between Tommy Mason, my lifelong friend, and I. We walked around a pit area with a toy microphone interviewing people, and for some reason it was a hit. People loved it. And so many people loved it that it ended up opening up the opportunity for Tommy and I to become track announcers, expanding what we did with the video stuff. We started catching the eye with a lot of our work of other streaming companies, to the point where we partnered with a streaming company. A company called Speed Sport is now kind of the umbrella of which we're under at Low Budget TV. But now we do live broadcasts. We just did a huge event this past Saturday out at Irwindale Speedway. And, you know, we had a team of 10 people, you know, corner cameras, multiple cameras up top, a roaming camera, the whole production setup. And it's still all us. And literally our production team are friends of ours. They're not people that we're hiring. Like, we're paying them, but they're not people that we're like, oh, these are professionals. Like, they're all friends of ours that are helping put on these productions. and in many cases. And yeah, you know, low budget TV, like I said, though, it started off as a joke. Like, that's Tommy and I, you know, it's always been us having fun and screwing around at the track. And when it turned into, hey, there's business potential of this, we kind of just saw where it took us. And we never would have guessed that not only would we eventually become the streaming service of a series out here called the Southwest Tour, the Spears Southwest Tour. It's basically the big super late model division that tours the West Coast. And this is a division that we used to, you know, watch in the grandstands going, this division's so cool. And now they have us touring with them everywhere we go. And on top of that, our shows are on television, on MAV TV. So there are so many times when Tommy and I just sit back and laugh, probably on a Saturday night, going, how the hell did we end up here? Like we never went into this going, we're going to make money, or we're going to, you know, like we didn't really have a goal per se. We just wanted to do the best we could. And that's always remained the goal. It's just opportunities have opened up, and a lot of the opportunities were because people approached us as opposed to vice versa. So that's been really neat. It's been a lot of fun. And for anyone that wants to ever check out Low Budget TV, we still have the YouTube stuff going. We have a Facebook page. And we also, on top of all that, our streaming service is lowbudget.tv. So if you ever want to check out a live show, you can see it there.
So with all the cars that you've used for low budgets, has there been any crazy stories with any of these cars?
Oh, God. Every car, there's a story. I'm just going to kind of run the ones that pop in my head. And I know there'll probably be people that go, you forgot this one. We had a car called the Runt. Every time we pulled it on the damn track, it would shut off. And we were replacing things on it. The car sucked. It was the dumbest little car that literally had the smallest wheels because that's all that would fit on it. And we were like, we hate this car, but we couldn't ever fully destroy it. And yeah, that car. My another car we had, my grandma's car. Straight up, my grandma's like, I want to get rid of this car. The power steering fluid's leaking, so take it. All right, let's go. And we ran with it. You know, that car is still around, and you know, season 5 of the Low Budgets. There was the car that showed up that we found the seatbelt, the way that this person, all the cars we get are from junkyards. And you realize how strange people can get with their cars. One person, their seatbelt broke. The part that clicks in. So what they decided to do was, because the click didn't work anymore, they went and bought a new, you know, I guess push button, so they could click in their steering, or not their steering wheel, their seatbelt. That makes sense, right? Except that instead of unbolting, there's a bolt that holds in that push button that you plug into. Instead of unbolting it and bolting the new one in, they decided to use packaging tape, clear packaging tape, to tape the new one that they bought to the old one and buckle their seatbelt in. When Tommy showed me this, I was like, this isn't real. Like, there's no way someone was this dumb. And if the person who did this is watching this interview, there's just no way that you were that dumb. You know, it goes down the line. Like, there's so many different cars that we had so many weird things with. We also had a car that literally took 5 minutes to start. You turn the key, and you know, a car goes, and then it starts up. This one literally went, 4 minutes later, it's going, 5 minutes later, and then it fires up. I don't understand how these cars, they are possessed by demons, and they do not work at the worst times. You know, before the first event we ever went into, this will be the last one I tell, because again, every car has a story. But we went into, we didn't have a radiator that would fit in the car because it was so beat up. Actually, I lied. This was the first car that I demolition derbied, the Gran Torino. But we tried fixing that car up. And what we did, because we've known of people doing this in the past, and this was a how dumb are you to Tommy and I. We hose clamped a metal pipe to the hoses that would connect to the radiator. So it circulate, instead of going through radiators, just circulating the water. It's a short-term thing that a lot of derby people do, but we didn't do it right. And when that thing built up pressure and heat, it exploded and we went flying. Like, oh my gosh, there was water everywhere. Luckily we were okay. But again, caught it on camera. And this goes back to why I filmed as much as I did with low budgets. It's because you just never know. But it was fun. I got one more for you. Tommy was driving a Volvo, and the throttle cable. So when you push down the pedal, it pulls on a metal cable on the carburetor, and it'll essentially it makes the car go. That it broke. So instead of us like reattaching it, Tommy just held on. He just grabbed the cable, and he literally had to drive it like this while steering. And I don't understand how he did it. Like, I literally can't even comprehend how this worked, but he made it work. Like, it was just so many stupid things that we did on the low budgets. And God, I'm glad we documented it all.
So moving on to questions that aren't necessarily about ponies, because there are little other things that you have. My next question is something that I bet a lot of people are wondering: why the heck do you like Zootopia so much?
Oh man, still love it. So I'll be honest with you. It probably pops up from now and then. I had to have one representation here. I got my Rescue Ranger mug because my Zootopia mug is already dirty, because that's always the first one I go for. I just, when Zootopia came out, I wasn't that excited for it. Honestly, I was just like, okay, it's Zootopia. It's a anthro movie. Let's go see it. And after the first time I saw it with Sarah, it hadn't even still quite hit me as hard as like, I was like, wow, that was really good. That was really good. Kind of like how MLP happened with me, I guess, where like I kind of went like, oh, that was good. That was great. And then I saw it again with some friends. We already knew we were going to do it. We saw it at the El Capitan in Hollywood. And I think after that, I was like, I want to see this again. And obviously I ended up saying this 30 times, but yeah, it's just the characters, the story. I have to go back to the characters. I absolutely fell in love with Judy and Nick and their dynamic. I loved it. I think the moment that absolutely made me in trouble was the moment when Judy was going through the tax evasion conversation, and she kind of does that little like side thing and goes, "It's called a hustle, sweetheart," and she's holding the pen. I was just like, oh my God, this is my favorite character of anything ever. And it stayed true. I have the shrine in the bedroom. Sarah is very excited that it continues to grow. But yeah, the characters, and then I don't know, I always, it's one of those movies that I felt like every time I went to see it 30 times in theaters, paid times in theaters, mind you, I 100% felt like every experience I was finding something new, finding a little intricacy. There were times where I went in those 30 viewings where I would just watch Judy, like at all times, or just watch Nick, or just pay attention to a character in the background. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that they made this expression or did this like this movement. Like, there was just, I was enthralled. I am enthralled with that movie. And yeah, I stand for Zootopia.
Well, it kind of reminds me of back when Sleepless in Ponyville came out. I remember watching that episode, and keep in mind, I have always been a gigantic Scootaloo fanboy. So
Oh, yeah?
knowing that it was her first episode, that was really cool. And when that episode finally dropped, I watched it, I want to say like 20 times over that weekend, and just looking at it and noticing different things about it. And up until Perfect Pair, it was my favorite episode of the entire series. It
Yeah.
was such a great episode. All the characters did, phenomenal work with both their voices, the animation, everything like that. So I could definitely see where you're coming from when it comes to Zootopia. I remember my wife and I went to go see that in theaters about a couple weeks after it hit,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, let's see what all this hullabaloo is about. And I had a couple people, one of my furry friends is just like, you will love, and I came out, I'm like, that was a pretty damn good movie. I liked it.
Well, it's funny too, because like I said, I wasn't even that excited about it going in. Like we were, Sarah and I usually go to the movies on Tuesdays because it's half off popcorn day. And she had a bad day at work. I think it must have been, so she worked the first half of the day on Sunday and just had a rough day at work. And she's like, can we please go watch Zootopia? And I'm like, but there's, I have to pay full price on popcorn. you know? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I was literally like, okay. I mean, like, it wasn't that big of a debate. Sarah wanted to go see Zootopia. She's like, I had a bad day. Can we go see Zootopia? The answer is yes, of course. Let's go to the movies. But I wasn't, I just was like, okay. And then of course watched it, really enjoyed it, watched it again, loved it. But I made a video called Buy Everything, a parody to Try Everything. And it's funny because in that, I'm not even wearing a Zootopia shirt in it. I'm wearing the platypus shirt just as a Disney shirt. And the reason was because I didn't even have a Zootopia shirt, despite me dancing around all of the merchandise. And it's because I made that like as this would be a great parody. And then Black Griffin got involved and went, absolutely, I wanna help with this. And but the thing was, I wasn't actually buying all the merchandise at that point. It wasn't until about 3 or 4 weeks after I released the video where I'm like, I hope they still have this stuff at the store. Like that's when all of a sudden I'm like, I gotta go buy this stuff. Yeah, it was a very slow burn to eventually get me to the point where I went, I need to literally actually buy everything. I wrote my own premonition about how it was going to be with the movie, which is so bizarre, but there I was.
So my next question is for you is, how did you and Sarah meet? What's that story about?
Let me go ahead and bring my mug back up because it's right here. So when I was taking some online courses, in high school, yeah, dang,
We're old.
I was, yeah, like back in my day, I didn't have my own computer at the time. I was still reliant on using my parents' computer. And when I had to take an online health class, I'm like, or I could just browse the internet, not focus on the class. And in doing so, at some point, I landed on some fan art of Chip and Gadget from Chip and No Rescue Rangers, and it was just like one of those nostalgia floods. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this show is my child. Like it's like I had forgotten about it. It's like after I stopped watching cartoons around maybe, I don't know, I can't really pinpoint when. All of a sudden I was like, I loved this show. Like, and it's like I forgot that I loved the show. And I went to recapture the magic and figure out, is it still airing on TV? And it was at 3 a.m, and I was recording it on a VHS tape, trying to just be like, I want to watch these again. And after I found the art, I started finding fan fictions. And then I remember one day I landed on this website called the Acorn Cafe, and I'm like, I don't see fan fictions, I don't see art, I'm out of here. It was a message board for fans of the Acorn Cafe, and it wasn't until like 2 weeks later when I went, like, I literally hit the brakes. You could hear the screeching as I like, wait a minute, there's fans of the show out there. And I couldn't remember the name of the website. So I'm like going back through all the old places I'd been trying to figure out where was this. And then I refound it. I think I joined in 2006. And then Sarah joined in 2007, about a year later. And you know, we hit it off. We were just talking a lot. You know, back on MSN Messenger days. And it always started off as a group of people from the Acorn Cafe meeting up. And then Sarah and I started kind of branching off to our own conversation. You know, there was a group chat going and then our chat going. And for about a year, we were just kind of talking one-on-one a lot, just about anything and everything. Like just any random, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What's your earliest memory? Just, you know, but a year of that. And it was funny too, because I always fall back to this about how the relationship itself began, but that's how I met her. But it was funny because Sarah, you know, she's a fantastic artist, and she was doing art, you know, of people at the cafe at the time. And one guy was like, hey, you should draw you and me like at the bar of the cafe. Like, because that's the Acorn Cafe, you know, even though it was a website, we visualized it as, you know, it was like an actual cafe where people would gather. And so, you know, this guy's like, hey, you should draw you and I at the bar, just hanging out. And so she drew this, and of course we all joked like, oh, you and this guy in a picture together. And she's like, no, I promised my dad that I would never get into an online relationship. So I always knew that. I always had that in the back of my head. And then one day Sarah approached me and roared at me and had this little thing in her at the bottom of all of her posts, her signature that says "RAR means I love you" in dinosaur. And I was like, wait a minute, is that what she means? I was like, oh God, I've had bad experiences with girls in the past. I don't know what this means, you know. And yeah, and that was the kickoff to our relationship. And yeah, you know, it's obviously it's gone well. Here we are married and, many years later. And yeah, no, it's been great. Every day I'm thankful that we found each other. And I always go back to, it's a good thing I was taking that online health course that I wasn't paying attention to.
You know, I remember watching the proposal video, and I was just like, that is so sweet.
I got away with that because she's used to me having a camera in my hand. So I'm like, I'm going to be able to vlog this, and she's not going to like be like, there's not going to be anything different. In fact, like totally got her. When I started proposing, she started seeing where I was going, like, oh my gosh. But where I was victorious was that she didn't realize that Tommy and a bunch of our friends were also there to film it. And that's where she's like, oh my God, you actually planned this out. And I'm like, yes, I did. Okay. So, but yeah, that was at Disneyland on the Mark Twain. And then we ended up getting married on a riverboat. So good times.
So this is something that I just found out today. Had no idea about this until now. But you also have a Let's Play channel with Sarah called Ready Player Dumb.
Yes.
Was that something that you started? Was that something she started? Why do you guys want to do a Let's Play channel?
We've been talking about this for a long time. In fact, the name, just to give an idea, I think we came up with the name for it in 2018. I'm trying to remember. I'd have to go back and check. But I think it was at Everfree Northwest, and we were with Gabe and his brother Nate, or Basic. And we were trying to come up with good names for the channel. And yeah, Ready Player Dumb popped up and was like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. And a lot of it stems around the fact that there's so many games that Sarah's been wanting me to play, and I've been very busy, and just taking the time to sit down and play a game. I have a very productive mind. So even when I'm like watching a movie, this is one reason why I like watching movies like at a theater, is that I turn this off. But like if I'm watching a movie, I almost feel like I should be editing at the same time. Like I need to have stuff going on, or vice versa. If I'm editing, I'm like, I need to find a movie to have playing, so I'm doing two things at once. I don't know why my brain works this way, but it does. And so that kind of kept me from playing a lot of video games that Sarah wanted me to play throughout the years. She's like, come on, I want you to play this. And I'm like, well, if I play it, I'd want us to film it. Like, I'd want us to maybe set it up, because if we're going to do this, there's people that do that. So there'd be the entertainment factor. It exists. And so it was definitely a group effort on her and my part, but she gets a lot of the credit. And you saw this before we even started our interview here. She definitely has a lot of the technical side of the stuff down. A lot of our production, the setup, like all that credit goes to her as far as getting the channel looking as good as it does, getting it running. We happened to land into some equipment that really helped us out at the time. Now we have a Patreon that goes to helping us maintain the equipment and improve and continue to get more games. But yeah, no, it was something that I wanted to do it as a channel, and she just wanted me to play some damn video games already. She's like, come on. So we were actually, what's funny is if you look at the timing, it started right at the time where the pandemic was kicking off. And that wasn't us going, well, there's a pandemic, we should start it. Like we were getting ready to start the channel at the time that the pandemic was arriving. And for, sitting at home, waiting to go back to work at some point, we did a lot of video games during the pandemic. And again, for me, that was good because like I said, I always feel like I should be working on something. And for me, that was like, cool. We're making a lot of progress. I'm playing these games. I'm revisiting games. And we've had so much fun with it. We occasionally play with our friends, including, Saber Spark, and, just to be able to have it all come together in the way that Sarah put together. You can see actually some of the production lighting and the green screen behind me. But yeah, it was something that we both wanted to do. And Sarah was the one who's like, well, she cracked her knuckles and said, we're doing this, and figured out what equipment to get. Got it, and yeah, and here we are, Ready Player Dumb. Almost a year now that we've been doing that, and a whole bunch of games: Kingdom Hearts, Red Dead Redemption, iRacing. Like it spans all over the place. Sega Genesis games, PlayStation 1 games. We're all over the place. So is my phone. So
I'm actually excited to watch your Until Dawn Let's Play. That looks really, really cool.
Oh God, for Halloween, for the month of October, we specifically did creepy or scary games. I had a lot of screaming moments actually during our Resident Evil playthrough. And then Until Dawn. Yeah, no, it was all the stuff that we're doing. Like you mentioned, Until Dawn, we played Amnesia during that time as well. Franbo, like that's the thing, is like it's so interesting restarting a YouTube channel after having done it with Low Budget TV and the ACRacebest channel is like, okay, I've been through this twice now as far as working on the audience side. It's like, all right, now let's do it again. And still building up that audience. But I just recently did a 24-hour stream, because we also have a Twitch channel, and we've posted that on YouTube since. But yeah, man, I tell you what, a 24-hour stream, it was a lot of fun. We had some people that actually hung around for all 24 hours. So for anyone that likes video games and likes laughing, because I don't take a lot of stuff seriously. I try to break video games while I'm playing them. Certainly hope that people enjoy it.
So my last question for you is, do you have any shout outs you'd like to give?
Well, I feel like I should absolutely give a shout out to my wife again, Sarah, or Toodles. We again, a lot of as far as the video game stuff, that credit goes to her. She's also been a massive help on some other editing projects that we've had in the last year. So Got to shout out her. I want to shout out each and every one of the conventions that we were supposed to go to in 2020. You already mentioned Winnie City, Ponyville, and no, see, now I'm screwing it up. It's like Winnie City Ponyville. What the hell's that? Winnie City PonyCon, Ponyville Cider Fest, BabsCon here on the West Coast, on the southern end of the West Coast, and then Everfree Northwest. Can't wait for conventions to kick back off. And yeah, and I'll give a shout out to you as well. This was a fun interview.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. This was a blast to do.
Yeah, this was it's been a while since I've done an interview like this, and like I said, a lot of these topics were things that I was like, can't wait to talk about this at the next convention, and then conventions were like, we'll see you next year. So no, this was fun. This was a lot of fun.
So without further ado, that's it from me, John.
I'm ACRacebest, and I'm an idiot.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Peace out, Dragon.
By the way, I should ask you, before we do get too deep into this, what's the rating for this interview?
You're totally fine to swear if you'd like. I can
say, Sarah, I can say fuck.